everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Memoir podcast. This is me, your host, Sweta, and today is going to be our episode number 6. So, if you have, listened to the previous podcast, you may know that we have been talking about different areas of mental health. And we have also been focusing about, different strategies or even like different ideas to look after one's mental health based on the certain topics each time. So today is going to be, I would say, quite similar, but also not similar in a lot of ways. So in today's episode, which is called Living with Anxiety. So what today's episode basically will look like is, so I will be talking about my experience of anxiety. And I will be talking about how I have been trying to manage that anxiety. So it's going to be a bit personal episode for today. I hope that's okay. So yeah, like always, I definitely have to follow my ritual, which is before I begin to talk about that, I really want to thank again everyone who has been with me in this journey. So, whether it's through, subscribing to my channel, dropping a comment or liking the videos, or even, listening to the podcast. So thank you again for that. And please keep doing that. So let's start our podcast for today, which is the episode number 6, Living with Anxiety. When I think about anxiety, I feel like this is one of the topics that I can, that I'm happy to talk about for hours and hours and hours. I feel like not because I feel like I've got like the best knowledge in the world. Definitely not. I think I'm still learning in that phase. But I feel like I've known anxiety very closely, or in other words, anxiety has known me very closely. So that is the reason why I feel like, I can talk about this topic for a long time. But don't worry, I won't be doing that. I will definitely be mindful of the time. So I just wanted to give a bit of a background onto that. So like I said before, that I will be talking about my experience with anxiety. So, it's going to be a bit personal in today's episode. So how this podcast structure is going to look like is I will start the podcast. I mean, I've already started it, but I will start to talk about it first by, I guess, discussing about or even acknowledging about my experience of anxiety. And I will also share some of the ways that I have been trying to manage this anxiety. Okay, so that's what I will be doing. So when I think about, I guess, the background, when I think about it, what is my experience of anxiety has been looking like, or, what has my experience of anxiety looked like in the past. In that case, I don't really know when I started experiencing anxiety. If somebody was to ask me and say, hey, do you know since when have you been experiencing anxiety? So in that case, I think I would not be able to answer that. But having said that, what I do know is that I have, known anxiety all my life, even since when I was a child. And back then, I guess this is kind of like a normal. I mean, not sorry normal, but I guess common experience for a lot of us. Is that back then when you would deal with something, right? So for instance, in my case, like I was saying, I have known anxiety since I was a child, since I was very, very small. But back then I didn't know what this feeling was, let alone knowing that this feeling is called anxiety. I didn't even know, okay, this is a feeling that, is anxiety, and this is what happens in anxiety and sort of stuff like that. So now when I look back at it, now when I reflect at it, I feel like, hey, hang on, okay, that was anxiety. The feeling that I experienced, even when I was 7-8 years old, I feel quite confident in saying that maybe likely, that could have been anxiety. So I remember at times, when I was very small, young, and when I had to go to school, and I remember I've got like this not so vivid, I guess, memory of that. But whenever, for instance, my mom would drop me to school, or even like, I guess they thought about going to school, would freak me out. Now you'd say that, that's quite common for every kid, right? I mean, or at least a lot of kids. I guess you sort of argue that, hey, it happens to a lot of kids. How can you say that's anxiety? So the thing would be, so when I look at my thought process, then one of, I guess, the couple of things that I can recall would be something like, I would be so afraid of my teachers. I guess even just sometimes, when my mom would drop me to school, I would be so, I guess, maybe have that fear of the teachers, or even, feel like, okay, my teacher's gonna, do something something to me today. Or I guess even just the feeling of, something's bad gonna happen. And, it's quite strange because now when I think about it, I kind of sort of, I'm able to, sort of put two and two together, like how, there's always what if in anxiety, what if this happens? What if that happens? And I feel like I've sort of experienced that from a quite young age. It may not be exactly anxiety. That's okay if you want to argue on that. That's fine. But maybe we could say that, I sort of started to develop anxiety then from a very young age. And now when I think about it, I feel quite strange. I feel quite funny. And at the same time, I do feel sad for myself. And I guess, sad that I had, experienced anxiety from a long time, from a very small age. So yeah, I just wanted to, give a bit of a background in terms of how my anxiety, or, when I felt like I understood anxiety, when was the time, when I look back at it now, when do I think I have, I started, I guess, maybe experiencing or feeling anxiety. All right. And so if we step off from there, even throughout my teenage and even now, I feel like I've been like an anxious person. Sometimes I jokingly say that, I live with anxiety, or anxiety lives with me, because that's how anxious I feel almost on a daily basis. Maybe not now, not at the moment. I'm so happy, because I can sort of tell that, my anxiety has been very much settled. There's no doubt on that. But I guess even a year back, even a couple of years back as well, or even, throughout my teenage years as well, I can tell that I have always been an anxious person, always been an anxious person. I've always, most of the times, whenever I look at this, some situations, I'd, think about like the worst case scenarios. What if, like I was talking about it before, the what if. And, when there's a lot of what if, trust me, it's very difficult, because you're always reflecting on the worst case scenarios. You're always over analyzing. You're always, generalizing. You're focusing on the black and the, it's either black or white kind of thought process. So that's how I've, I guess I've felt a lot of times whenever I've been anxious. And the other thing that I feel I quite resent regarding my anxiety is that I feel like, due to my anxiety, I've lost a lot of good opportunities in my life. And there's no doubt on that. There's no doubt that, because of this anxiety, which has always been my friend, I've lost a lot of good opportunities in my life. Because, if you're a highly anxious person, it's likely that you are also less confident. Because when you're feeling anxious, what's also happening is that you are underestimating yourself, right? So for example, let's say if I have a job interview the next day, and even if I'm like, very qualified, even if I'm very highly skilled and good and have a good amount of experience as well, but also if I'm a highly anxious person, there's chances that what I would think about, or what I would think about the outcome of the interview would look like, is that I would feel like I'm not gonna get the job. They're gonna ask me a question and I won't be able to answer that at all. Or I'd say something and it might come across as really wrong. So I would really freak out of that interview. And even the whilst, of course, it's natural for people to feel nervous, during the interview, or even like about the thought of it. But because there's a difference between, that natural energy of being nervous versus, feeling very anxious. So yeah, so like I was saying, when I think about it now, I've lost good amount of opportunities in my life due to anxiety, because my anxiety always kept telling me that you're gonna fail, you're not gonna get the job. Even if you do get the job, you're not gonna do good, and you won't like it, and you'll just sort of quit the job, you'll resign the job. And even now, even today, I have a couple of people tell me, not everyone, but just a couple of people tell me that, hey, I feel like you've got more potential than what you are, I guess, utilizing at the moment. You've got more capacity. And look, I'm not trying to sort of brag about myself or anything like that, but I do believe when they said that, because I know that I've got more capacity, more skills than what I'm offering at the moment, or what I'm utilizing. And sometimes I do feel like, oh, okay, maybe I need to sort of channel my skills and my capacity into something bigger. But you know what? What holds me back is that anxiety. That really holds me back. Because personally, I'm a person that does not like change. I like to be in a set of routine. I like to, be very organized. I like to know what I can expect. And that's my nature, which isn't always very healthy, which isn't always very helpful. So that is my nature, that, I like to be, I like to know what I can expect. I like to be in a set of routine. I don't like changes a lot. It's like, I don't like surprises kind of thing. So, yeah, but, because of that anxiety, I guess the self-talk about anxiety, which keeps telling me that, if you look for change, it's not, you won't like it. If you look for change, you're going to struggle and stuff like that. So I guess that is one of the reasons as to why I really struggle to step out of my comfort zone. Because look, I live with anxiety, like I was saying before. But hang on, the good thing is that it looks so much better now. My anxiety is so much settled. I don't think my anxiety is controlling me or my life the same way as how it was controlling before in the past. And the other thing, like about, I would, and I'm saying in a personal point of view, is that like sometimes you might just feel that nervous energy. Sometimes you might just feel anxious, but you might not necessarily know why you're feeling that way, right? So that's kind of quite frustrating, because sometimes if you cannot pinpoint your feelings or pinpoint as to why you're feeling certain way, that could be quite stressful. And that I have noticed that, it has been happening to me often as well. To a point where I can manage, of course, but it has been happening to me as well. So, for example, even if on my days off, even when on my days off, when I don't have to work, when I don't have to think a lot about responsibilities, when I can just maybe have some time for myself and just relax and just have that self-care. So even on those days, I used to feel, or sometimes I still feel, that anxiousness, and I don't really know why, because I usually, if I talk about my pattern of anxiety, I used to mostly feel anxious during work days. Not because, I mean, of course, there's self-doubt there. There's no doubt on that. But most of the times, like I used to feel anxious. My anxiety would trigger more because of work, I would say. But lately, or maybe even recently, what I did notice is that I'm feeling anxious for no reason. It's like I've got a day off. I've got a good day ahead of me. Um, I can utilize my day looking after myself. I don't have to worry about anything, at least for that day. But when I wake up, I'm waking up with this really strange feeling in my chest. Some really strange feeling, and I can see that, I can feel that my anxiety is physical as well. So, and I can't really know, why am I feeling anxious? Why am I feeling so restless? Like and even when I'm focusing on myself, for instance, let's say if I'm watching something which is quite interesting for me, still in those moments, I might experience that feeling again as well. And I can't really know where is that feeling coming from. And that is some of the thing that really frustrates me, because if I really don't know why something is happening to me, I really can't do much about it, I guess. And I feel a lot of you might agree with me on this, is like, if you don't really know what's happening, or what the problem is, you might not be able to sort of do anything about that. So that's been something that I've also noticed, you know on myself in terms of how anxiety is affecting me. So I just wanted to share a bit on that because I feel like a lot of you might be able to relate to that, like the feeling of, that that's anxiety, but you don't really know, why am I feeling this way? So I just wanted to share a bit on that as well. So, look, there's millions and millions of things that I want to talk about my anxiety. Like I was saying jokingly, anxiety is my favorite topic. I think because I can relate the most to that. I've, in a lot of ways, it might feel, sound funny, but in a lot of ways, I feel like I connect with anxiety because I know that anxiety. I know how it feels to feel anxious, and things like that. So this is one of the things that I'm even like one of the area that I'm highly interested in as well. And whenever I work with people who are dealing with severe anxiety, I've also realized that I work I feel like I can contribute more as well whenever I work with people again, who are going through anxiety. So regarding my experience with anxiety, I think we might I think it might be okay to just stop it till for now, because I think if I keep going, it's going to be a long podcast. I think it's going to be the longest podcast in the history, and I don't want to be making that record. So maybe I'll just stop it for now. If I feel like I need to talk about it more, I might make another podcast. And of course, just like the grief and loss podcast that I made, that was my second episode. So just like that podcast, I did mention that I will be making another episode as well about grief and loss. So the same with anxiety, because I think because there's like certain topics that you don't feel like it's justified just to get covered in just one instances. And since my podcast, they're not too long, so even regarding anxiety, I will definitely be making another one as well. So keep an eye on this page or this channel, whatever that is. All right, so now I want to talk about how I have been trying to manage my anxiety. So when I look back at when I look at it, I feel like I've come a long way in terms of my anxiety. I think I've come a long way. And this is one of the things, I'm not proud of myself for a lot of things, but this is definitely one of the things that I'm really proud of myself for. Because I feel like in terms of that anxiety, I've come far. I feel like anxiety is no longer controlling my life or my actions or my behaviors the way it used to. Can I still work on that? Do I need to work on it more? Of course, yes, no doubt on that. But have I um, come a long way in terms of how am I managing anxiety at the moment? That's a yes as well. So I just want to share about a couple of my experiences in terms of how I have been trying to deal with my anxiety. Again, this is not like an one size fits all thing. Some of the things that has helped me might help you, might not help you. So of course it depends on each person as well. But I'm just going to share a couple of things that I have maybe practiced incidentally, directly, indirectly, sometimes just very naturally, that has helped me to manage my anxiety at the moment. Okay, so I'll talk about that. So I guess I like to start first by acknowledging that, what I've done at the moment is that I'm no longer seeing my anxiety as my weakness. That's the main thing I guess that's the first thing that I want to point it out, because, when you think that, because I used to feel like I'm such an anxious person, highly anxious person, and the people close to me would know that I'm a highly anxious person. I am up to a certain point. So, I used to always question that anxiety. I used to feel like, why is it such a weak? Why do I have this amount of anxiety? Why can't I just move on? Why can't, I just, why am I always um, fearing the worst case thing? Why am I always underestimating myself and stuff like that? And when that was happening, I felt it was a weakness. And look, I'm not trying to say that feeling anxious is not weakness at all, nothing or anything like that. But I guess sometimes it's also about the mindset. You feel like I'm an highly anxious person, and that's my weakness, right? So, and I think that is a mindset that we really have to work on. So now what have been doing is that I'm sort of, I guess, shifting through that mindset and maybe not, I guess, seeing anxiety as a weakness. It's a feeling, just like any other feeling. Like just like how as a human being we feel sad, we feel upset, we feel happy, we feel so content. That's exactly like, anxiety is just like any other feeling. You feel anxious at times, and I guess it shouldn't be taken as a weaknesses or anything like that, which I think I did a lot, back then. I felt it was my biggest weakness, is that I'm such a highly anxious person, and that's my biggest weakness, you know? So now what I do is that I'm not exactly taking that anxiety as a strength, but what I'm doing here is that whenever there's anxiety, I always tell myself it's just trying to make me feel prepared for something. Or, the fact that I feel anxious because I care about things. Or the fact that, anxiety, the job of the anxiety was to maybe, I guess, remind me about something, or make me feel prepared or give me a warning. That's fine, but now it's up to me to take it from there, right? So when I'm doing that, if you have analyzed that, I'm no longer, I guess, making that anxiety my weakness, because I'm saying, all right, anxiety is just like any other feeling. Anxiety is just in like any other feeling that you might experience on an everyday basis, that you might experience, like in your life. And now I'm also kind of shifting the purpose of anxiety here. So of course, there's definitely, I hate my anxiety, to be honest, because it stops me from believing in myself. It stops me from being confident in the things that I know that I am good at. I hate anxiety for that, and that's okay. I have right to hate this anxiety. But at the same time, I'm also kind of focusing its other purpose, which is, all right, it's just trying to make me feel prepared, it's just trying to remind me that I care about things. It's just trying to sort of, warn me for things. It's just trying to make me feel more prepared, so that I can deal with the situation in a better way. So, when I'm doing that, now this anxiety is not as powerful for me as what it was before. I'm no longer only seeing anxiety as a threat, I would say. So now it's like, all right, anxiety, you did your job. Look, you made me think about certain thing. You did your job. Now that's okay, but you don't have to stay longer. That's fine. You can leave. You don't have to stay longer. So I guess, like, again, like, if seeing your anxiety not as a weakness but as a strength can also help you. And it's like, my anxiety might be telling me that, for instance, something worse might happen. Or, like I was giving you the example before, that if I was to go for a job interview, um, I would not get the job, or, something would happen, that something unpleasant would happen, right? So it's like saying, all right, anxiety, you did your part. That's fine for now. But I don't have to believe that, or that doesn't have to be necessarily true, right? So you're also challenging that anxiety as well. So again, it's like, like, I think I have almost repeated myself this statement in all of my podcast, and even to people, I think. I'm quite concerned. I hope, I guess nobody, I guess, this will be taken a positive way, but sorry for repeating it all the time. But this is my favorite thing. This is my favorite, I would say, um, favorite, I guess, quotes, or, even favorite thing to live by, if you will, is that your aim should never be to control your feelings. It's like, people might stop, work on stopping themselves from feeling angry, and that's not realistic in a realistic world. I don't know how, if that makes sense or not, but that's not realistic. And just like that, it's not realistic if I try to control my anxiety, because my anxiety is there for a reason. It's not just because of nothing, right? So it's there for a reason. And I'm not trying to control the anxiety, but I'm certainly working on saying, all right, I understand I can't control the anxiety, but I will be really mindful, to work on, or to sort of, I guess, be mindful that the anxiety is not controlling my life, or the fact that, my responses, my my responses, my behaviors is not being, overpowered by this anxiety. So that's what I'm doing here, is that I respect my anxiety. I respect that it's here, but I will also be mindful that, I will not let it control my life in a lot of ways. Just because my anxiety is saying me that, you will fail, does not mean that I will fail. It might be kind of maybe trying to maybe tell me that, hey, there's might be a chances that you might fail. So, what can you do to maybe succeed? That's fine. If that's the intention of my anxiety, I'll welcome it. But, if it's like, if my anxiety is constantly, reminding me that, hey, you're going to fail, then okay, anxiety, you've done your part, but look, you're not welcome now. I think you've stayed enough for today. That's fine. You can go back for now. I've got it from here, right? So it's like, again, I'm not being afraid of that anxiety. Not being afraid of that anxiety, because the more you feel afraid of this anxiety, the anxiety will just overpower you, right? So do not being afraid of that anxiety is one of the important things. Like I said before, not taking your anxiety as a weakness, and that, trust me, that is I would say, life changer. That is a life changer. One of the things that we can possibly start doing. And the other thing that I also have been doing, maybe not all the time, maybe not very consciously, is that when I was saying before that, one of the things about anxiety is that we might often, notice ourselves being in a situation where we are questioning, where we're reflecting about the worst case scenarios, right? Like, what if this happens? And things like that. So sometimes, we might really, really, I guess, get caught up with those kind of situations, like what if and what ifs, a lot of what if and all the worst case scenarios. So what I do is sometimes is that I still reflect on the worst case scenarios. So if I'm feeling anxious about a certain situation, which I can identify, that's actually quite helpful if I can identify what situation is making me feel anxious or what is making me feel anxious. So if there's a situation that is making me feel anxious, and if I can identify that, so what I do is that I think about, all right, so what is that worst case scenarios that might happen? So I'll give you the same example that I have been repeating today, is when I think about the interview, and like, it's like, okay, my anxiety, my anxious mind is telling me that I might not get the job. My anxious mind is telling me that I will really mess it up, for instance, right? So let's say if that is the worst case scenarios that's going to happen, like, what might be some of the outcome? All right, I might not get the job. I might, mess it up. Of course, that will affect me. Definitely, that will affect me. There's no doubt on that. But at the same time, I ask myself, will that be the end of the world then? Will that be the end of the world? Or for instance, would that matter for me in a 6 months time? So I'm kind of like looking at the bigger picture here as well. Or simply, challenging that thought process by asking, would that be the end of the world? And the answer is no. Like I said, of course, I'll be affected by the fact that I didn't get the job. I'll be affected by the fact that I made myself look like a fool by messing my interview, and I feel like, oh, what are they thinking about me, right? Of course, that's normal. That's understandable for me to feel. But at the same time, it's not going to be the end of the world. And that is exactly what anxiety does to you, is that it makes you feel like that will be the end of the world, because there's a lot of anticipation. So, for example, it's saying that you've got an interview tomorrow. What if you fail? Or what if you do not get the job? What if you mess it up? And, you're going to look full. And then, you won't have the confident to try for another job again, and you won't be having any job, and you're going to be broke. There's going to be financial stresses and all of that. So my anxiety is making me I'm not saying overthink, but it's making me think 10, 20 times ahead of that outcome, right? And again, I will start feeling out of control naturally, which anxiety, does to us, is that it makes us feel like we don't have much control, we don't have power. So, like I was saying, that's what anxiety, would do, is that anxiety will make me feel like, that will make me think about the worst case scenarios, and also will make me think about 10 times, 10 more worst case scenarios after that. So that is why, it's important that I remind myself that, look, if you do not get the job, of course you'll be affected by it. You'll really feel bad for, let's say, even like up to a month, for instance. But will that be the end of the world? And the clear answer is no, probably not. Or even if it is, um, it might not be as bad as to what my anxiety is making me anticipate. So again, it can be also kind of like you're challenging your self belief when you are having anxious moments. Okay, that can be another thing as well. So if you have been experiencing something similar, again, it's important to challenge that anxiety, your thought process in a healthy way. Okay, you're not saying something like, oh no, I will really do my I will have the best interview, or the oh, I'm just going to ignore my anxiety. But you're kind of saying that, all right, anxiety, this is what you're saying to me, but will that be the end of, but does it have to be true? Well, does it have to be true what you're saying, or what you think will happen? Or even if does that happen, will that be the end of the world? All right. So again, putting a boundary in that anxiety. It's like control anxiety before it controls you. So as simple as that. And the other thing that I have also been practicing is, like how with anxiety, sometimes you might really have trouble switching off. Because, you're always, most of the times, you're not being able to focus because, you're having these anxious thoughts in your mind, you're feeling anxious, right? So I have been consciously taking steps to recognize when I'm maybe thinking a lot, or when I'm feeling anxious a lot. So, for example, if there's something coming up, right, and if I'm feeling anxious about it, which is if I feel like that's natural for me to feel anxious about, I let myself feel that way. I have been practicing that more and more. Like, I always talk about addressing your feelings, just sitting with that feeling. And I have been doing that a lot of the times at the moment, and that's been massively helpful. But if I notice myself being anxious, to the point that I'm not being able to struggling to switch off. So for example, I might be using my phone, I might be watching something, even I might be talking to someone, but I'm not being able to be fully present because I'm feeling anxious still in the back of my mind. So when there's situations like that, I always I guess work on, first of all, I guess being aware of the fact that, all right, even though this was understandable, this situation was understandable to give me anxiety, but look, what's happening is that I'm feeling very anxious to the point that I'm not being able to focus on anything, and that's not healthy. And I ask myself, why is it important that I think about it now? Why is it important that again, if I'm feeling anxious about something that, for an event, let's say, I feel like, okay, why is it important that I feel think about that even now? So it's like, again, it could be again come it can again I guess seem like you're kind of challenging that self, that thought process. Maybe it could be, but again, it's also like you're trying to put a boundary in terms of how much you are investing yourself self on that anxiety or that anxious thought. And like I've always been telling in all of my videos, is that do not push away your feelings. I did that a lot of times in the past. Never helpful, never helpful. It's okay, you can take one step at a time. You can, slowly and slowly start to sit with your feelings. You don't have to rush into that, but at the same time, also be mindful that you are not pushing your feelings, because when it comes back, it's going to come back really bad. So do not push your feelings onto that. So I have been doing that a lot this time. Whenever I feel anxious, I just let myself feel anxious, because if I'm allowing myself to feel anxious, that's when the feeling will settle down slowly. And I guess that's also been one of the things that has been helping me a lot. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I make a bit of a balance. Like whenever I feel anxious, whenever there's anxious thoughts, I do not completely push it away. I do let it sit for a while, but at the same time, if I feel like, okay, now it's too much, I feel like the anxiety is overstaying at my house, I just invited the anxiety for a day, or for 1 hour. But look, it's almost been 5 hours and the anxiety is not going away. All right, so I'll have to put a boundary on that anxiety. It's just like, how sometimes you feel like, some people are staying in your arms, coming to visit you, or, sometimes you might visit somebody and you'll feel like, I feel like, maybe it's time already that I live or they live, right? So it's, I mean, another funny example that is so me that I give all the time. I don't know where does that pop in for me, but yeah, it's kind of like similar, at least with for myself. That's how I feel. Is that all right? Look, I did give that anxiety a space to be in there, but I feel like now anxiety might just want to go, or it's better that anxiety go, or that thought process to go away. And I consciously, I guess, try to put a boundary on that. And look, everything that I've been saying so far, I understand that, it is always easy to talk about things. I understand, whilst I'm talking about it, it feels very easy for me. And but if I was to sort of practice the same thing, it won't be as easy as what it feels like at the moment. But that's okay. That is okay. But the main thing is that, is being consistent with whatever techniques you have for yourself, is being consistent, whether it be, if you're someone that is an anxious person, that if you feel anxiety, and let's say you have been letting that anxiety out, or you have been managing that anxiety by, let's say, for instance, talking to people, or maybe doing exercise, for example. So one thing that you can certainly do is be consistent with that. Be consistent with how you've been managing your anxiety. Of course, every day won't look the same. Some days, you won't be able to sort of get through that. That is okay. But having said that, just being consistent is another important thing that you can try as well. And the other thing, and I'm kind of sensing that the podcast is will become very um lengthy today, so I'm being quite mindful of the time. So a couple of other really, I would say, basic things that can help you with your anxiety in your everyday life would be, not saying something very new. You probably would have heard about it a thousand of times. Is focusing on your health, focusing on your physical health, doing exercise, moving your body whatever ways you can, eating quite healthy, drinking lots of water, which I'm proud of, because I haven't started, I at the moment I drink lots and lots of water, and a good sleep, which I know that I have to work on. So because often, things like this we often overlook. We feel like, exercise, how's that going to help my anxiety? Eating healthy, eating clean, or having a good sleep, how's that going to help with my anxiety? But it does to in a lot of extent, it does. And that is something we can start doing. The strategy might come second, but that is some of the things we can start to make changes in our life, if that's important. If nothing else, like I said, just even getting your body moving. And the other thing that also really calms me down whenever I feel anxious is when I move, or even when I'm just walking around. That really does help me. So, so some of the things that you can do, talk about your anxiety. It's always, whenever anxiety works really best a lot of times, either when you talk about it or when you write about it, because when you're doing that, you are releasing that anxiety, right? So either you want to talk about your anxiety to, to your support network, or even to a professional, that's up to you. But to talk about your anxiety, talk about, I guess, your feelings, that's important. Or you can sort of just write it down as well. Because if you're really feeling anxious, let's say, sometimes your anxiety can be really heightened. So in that moment, if you're not sure, what do I do, how do I calm myself down? All right, so what I can do is, maybe I'll try to sit down and I'll just write about what's happening. I'll just sort of maybe just describe what the situation is looking like in that moment, or maybe I can just write down about my anxiety. What am I feeling? What do I feel that is anxiety? That's another important point. Is and its relation to your feelings is also important to reflect on, where do I feel that? If I feel sad, where do I feel the sadness? If I feel anxious, where do I feel that anxiety? Okay, and again, write about your anxiety. If you got any thought process, like, or thoughts whenever you are feeling anxious, write about that. And that's another really important and helpful technique. A very simple yet effective technique that you can try whenever you're feeling anxious. And lastly, the other one of my favorite thing that I do that I would also like to suggest, if you're feeling anxious or having that anxiety attack, is practicing self-affirmations stuff. Because your self-talk really influences, has a great power in how, I guess, in your anxiety. So, couple of self-affirmations that you can practice if you're feeling anxious would be something like, I'm safe, or I know this feeling. This feels like anxiety. I felt this feeling before and I've survived it. So you're kind of basically stating the fact, which is, this feeling is anxiety. So it gives you, it starts to give you the sense of power, because because you're saying that, hey, I know this feeling is anxiety. It's not a new feeling for me. So you kind of feel that power in that way. And you're saying that this is not a new feeling for me. I know this feeling. This feels like anxiety, or this is anxiety. And I have survived this feeling, which is true. You felt anxious before, but you've survived that feeling, right? So I guess those kind of self-affirmations, or I am safe, or things will be okay. This might be very, I guess, common thing about, a common, I guess, self-affirmation that we may have been hearing. But again, stuff like that. So again, you may find a lot of self-affirmation stuff as well. And I also have been making mindfulness guided meditation videos as well. And I will also be making one guided meditation video, an audio one, whatever you like to call, about panic attacks very soon as well. So again, keep a watch for this space. So yeah, a couple of things, like I said, that I practice, which I feel has been very, very, very helpful. I think it's been very much helpful in terms of how my anxiety is looking at the moment. Of course, I do feel anxious. There's no doubt on that. But I feel okay in saying that I can say that my anxiety is being well managed. I think that's what is important. It's like, like I've been telling you all the time, the goal is not to stop yourself from feeling anxious. It's about working on, how can I manage this anxiety, and just like with any other feeling. So look, I think this has been the longest podcast in my channel that I've made. And look, I warned you before. I said to you that I can speak about anxiety for hours and hours and hours. But I won't. Now I'm going to stop it for now. But like I said, I might, come up with more contents about anxiety in the in the future episodes as well. Sorry about that. So I'll come up with that. So thank you for, again, listening to me. Whoever has been listening to me, or whoever has been in this space with me, thank you so much. I again want to express my gratitude for that. So I hope today's episode was helpful. Like I said, it was a bit coming from a personal level, but I still hope that it was helpful for people listening to that podcast, to this podcast. I don't know what's wrong with me today, but anyway. So if you got any questions, or if you got anything that you want to comment, or any feedback, like I said, they're always welcome. I'm always happy, even if it's like constructive feedback, you're always welcome to give so as well. So please drop me a comment if you got anything to share, or even your experience of anxiety. I'd love to listen to that as well. If you got any suggestions, or any strategies that you'd like to talk about, or you'd like to share about anxiety, please drop a comment. Else, you can also send me a message on my Instagram page, which is the Mental Health Memoir, same as the YouTube one. So you can send me a message there as well. Happy to reply to you there. And again, if I can be of any help, do let me know. So I'd like to end this episode for today. I will be back very soon. And again, thank you for sticking with me till this moment. I hope you all have a wonderful day, wonderful night. Depends on the part of the day you're listening to. But again, I hope you all also have a really safe and sound mental health as well. And like I tell you all the time, please look after your overall health, definitely, but also focus on your mental health. And I will be back very soon. Until I will see you when I see you. Bye.